Welcome to the shooting show. This week we're in the Scottish borders with David Virtue on Corvid control, plus Richard Atkins reviews a semi-auto from Beretta, the A300 Extrema. David Virtue has taken a team of clients out decoying in the Scottish borders. Both Pigeon and Crow have been hammering these spring barley fields. The weather is extremely changeable, but the wind will help to keep the birds moving.
Well, you watch the field after it's been sown, and it usually takes a day or so, or maybe a couple of days for the pigeons to actually find it and get onto the feed. But once they're on it to feed, you need to be on there within 24 hours really, because they'll just feed on it and then they'll just disappear. And you've got one or two fields back up really, that's fallback plans. If that field's not working, you need to go on to the next one, and you sometimes have to move once or twice in a day at this time of year, where if you're shooting harvest at stubbles, August, September, the pigeons are generally coming to the field for 2 or 3 days, 4 or 5 days at a time, and you've got plenty of time. You've got all the time in the world to watch the field, make sure they're flighting to it, and then set up and shoot it. But just now, if they come onto a field, there's very little left on the top grain anyway on a spring barley field, so they can clear it within a day, sometimes less. Sometimes a few hours and they're gone. It can be blue 1 minute with pigeons, and the next they're gone. So it's difficult. It's a challenge, but it's a good challenge, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's pigeon shooting.
Eden stakes out another field to cover more ground, with Byron Pace manning the camera.
Well, it was a different part of countryside for us. We hadn't really been down there before. Much more rolling and things like that. A lot more birds than what we're used to as well, flying about. And not great weather either. We turned up and it was quite still, but miserable rain. There's steam coming off that field. We set up our decoys and all that sort of thing. We didn't have much time to check out flight lines, but David helped us with that, obviously. So we stuck up our hide and our decoys, and not much was happening. Not much was coming in. We heard plenty of banging going on at the other guys, but so the first place we sort of thought was a bit dry, so we packed up and moved on to a second field.
The lads are still getting shooting there then?
It's just started to pick up again now.
There's 300 or 400 in that field just there.
Is it really?
We look at, there's a lot in here too. I think they're everywhere. You just see them there. There's a lot of stuff been sown just this last week, and that's what they're all working. There's just pigeons and feeding everywhere. It helps at least they're 2 or 3 shooting today. That'll keep them, moving. It's just those were shot there yesterday. They might be a bit wary of that corner. I would always pick a fresh spot, a fresh field if you can, and do that.
I think here looks good. I mean, we saw, as soon as we arrived here, we saw so much more than we've seen all morning at the other place.
But yet there was nothing on there this morning.
No.
Not a pigeon. Well, if you can get along and you could drive right down that grass to there.
Yeah, and then just walk around the corner.
Yep. Well, these ones we've been shooting today have been all spring barley fields that have been sown, and probably just sown a day or a couple of days, maybe 3 days. Yes, it's difficult this time of year. I mean, you can have the field blue with pigeons, but actually getting them to come back in, or if they're a lot sown, they'll just move from one field to the next. So you've got to try and get your pattern right and get into the right bit, and as I say, hope that the weather's on your side as well.
Then the sun started to come out, it got a bit better, the birds were moving a bit more. The pigeons weren't loving our decoys though. Don't know what it was, probably maybe the wetness on the plastic deeks. It was shining a wee bit too much. That's 3 pigeons in a row.
Even as the pigeons start to come into the deeks, disaster strikes. Eden's semi-auto jams.
Eden, why the glum face? What's that? Why are you intently looking at your phone looking for answers?
So you shouldn't buy a semi-automatic.
No.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with semi-automatic, it's just your semi-automatic. So what are you shooting with now? Your trusty old?
Maruku of 1 under.
There you go. Now, if you can dry your eyes, we can get back to shooting. That's the first lot of birds that actually come into the decoys properly. You had a magnet out for a while, but we took it out.
Yeah, I think it was going a bit slow. I need to try and speed it up. David thought it's probably pushing them off a bit, but the crows were coming in quite nicely. They were quite inquisitive, and it was nice to use that crow call.
Eden and Byron aren't the only ones to pull in the crows to the deeks. The other guns on an adjacent field are making a respectable bag of the corvids too. David lets us in on the secret to his successful corvid control patterns.
I had some of those Sillosocks with that UKShootWarehouse, the crow ones, and they've been working well just in the spring, and the crows have been decoying well into them. Other things, as I say, the magnets, you could try them to start with in the spring of the year, but I find they work well at harvest for a lot younger pigeons. But this time of year, yesterday they worked, today they didn't. So you've got to try. You try it to start with. If it looks like they're not working, pull it in. And even the flapper, if it's not working, pull it in.
And why are they so much more weary and flighty at this time of year? At harvest, it can almost be too easy sometimes.
Yes, but at harvest you're dealing with a lot of young pigeons. You're dealing with all the pigeons that's bred from now right through to July, August, and still breeding. Now, this time of year, in March, April, it's generally all old pigeons you're shooting. Maybe 1 or 2 youngsters just born, but all educated pigeons that have been through the mill last year and probably been shot at. So they're just a bit more wary. And you know, just a bit more, they know what they're on, they know what it's about. I know if you've got guys there that maybe haven't done a lot of pigeon shooting, which some of these lads hadn't done a lot of pigeon shooting, if you know they're firing at them a bit late or whatever, all you're doing is educating those pigeons, so those go away and are wary the next time they're coming into decoys or a magnet or a flapper or anything like that. But you just got to try everything each day, and different patterns work and other ones don't. But you know, as I say, some people, the crows were decoying well today, and then another person 2 fields away, the crows wouldn't decoy, but the pigeons would decoy. And you know, there's no rhyme or reason to it, but you try different things.
Yeah, in the end it was an alright day. It's like just under 40 I think our bag was, so yeah, quite happy with that. Head down again soon.
Eden finally getting to grips with the corvids there, and now the shooting show news.
This is the shooting show news. Executive Chairman of the Countryside Alliance, Sir Barney White-Spunner, has resigned from the Lead Ammunition Group following what he called abuses of process. He resigned in protest after the circulation of an unapproved report, which the majority of the group had no part in drafting. He said the report was presented to the group as a fait accompli, adding that the Countryside Alliance would not walk away from the lead issue and he would continue to consult with the shooting community on how best to proceed. It's just over 3 weeks until the nation's favourite sporting competition, the Clay Shooting Classic, taking place at Windrush Shooting Ground on the 24th to the 27th of June. Big names such as Ed Solomons, John Lee and Mark Windsor have already booked their places, and you could join them. There's £35,000 worth of prizes to be won, including Zolly and hats and shotguns, Shadit cartridges and clothing. An added bonus this year is the return of the Classic Sport Trap, a 100 bird competition running alongside the Classic Sporting with £4,000 up for grabs. Enter the Sporting and Sport Trap by calling 08448 269 270 or visit the website on screen now. The 17th annual Krieghoff DTL competition results are in. Ian Malarkey beat a host of big names to take the top spot for the second year in a row. With a score of 597, he won himself the grand prize, a Krieghoff K80. Runner-up Nigel Chapman took home £1,500 cash after finishing 1 point behind Malarkey in the final head-to-head shoot-off. The prestigious 200 bird shoot will be back next year. Read a full list of results in the next issue of Clay Shooting magazine. The search is on for Scotland's best young gamekeeper. The Scottish Gamekeepers Association is once more awarding the Young Gamekeeper of the Year award to an individual who has excelled in the early stages of their career. Nominations for candidates must be received by the 17th of June and should be sent to the SGA office or to the email address on screen now. And finally, Blaze Publishing is launching a new shotgun shooting magazine for bird shooting, iShoot. Following its successful introduction last year, the magazine will expand by merging with Modern Gamekeeping magazine and committing to a monthly frequency in both printed and digital form. iShoot will include articles of interest to game shooters, wildfowlers and rough shooters as well as gamekeepers, while offering digital enhancements and video content. Find out more at ishootmag.com now. That was the Shooting Show news.
Here we are again at Park Farm Shooting Ground, Ombersley, and we're testing the Beretta A300 Extrema gas operated semi-automatic shotgun. Well, we've got a composite stock, as you see on here, which are very strong and sturdy, weatherproof, so can be used under all manner of conditions. It's fitted with a kick-off pad, so within there is a compression system behind this rubber butt pad to control the recoil of this gun. Because it will chamber quite heavy cartridges, you need a fairly substantial recoil reduction system, and they seem to have incorporated in. The trigger guard is also quite a good size, so that you might be wearing gloves on occasions when you use this sort of guns that can take 3.5-inch cartridges might be used on the foreshore, so early in the morning you'd want your gloves on. A fairly tight radius again for a game or general purpose gun, so even my quite small hands, trigger finger falls quite comfortably onto the trigger. Quite a reasonable shape, no palm swell, but you wouldn't expect that. But it drops on there comfortably, and the trigger pull is comfortably under £5, about under 4 3/4, I think. Feels quite reasonable. This gun is obviously built to fulfill a number of purposes. It's not necessarily a specialist gun, it's more something that you can use in a number of roles, and we say that because it's chambered to accept 2 3/4, 3-inch, and even 3.5-inch cartridges. Well, that's quite a heavy payload sort of thing you'd have at wildfowling and high geese and that sort of thing, which some people do some of the time, but you wouldn't be doing all of the time. And this gun offers the versatility, as we've proved today, of firing standard 28-gram clay loads as well. We have put 35-gram loads through it to feel how well the recoil reduction system works, and even though I'm relatively recoil sensitive, I found it surprisingly comfortable. This isn't the sort of gun to carry embellishments as such, because it's built for practicality and to fill a number of roles. You're not going to be worried about scratching it. It's hard to scratch, and even if you did, you won't cry too much. It's not like scratching a piece of grade 5 walnut, so it's more for practicality. The matte black of the action and the matte black of the barrels stopping the glare, so whether you were in a pigeon hide or whether you were tucked into the tufts of seagrass on the foreshore, you don't want light glinting off your gun. And as you can see, it's a fairly matte finish all round, so it's built for practicality, not embellishment, and that's fine for the style of gun that it is. It's got the Optima style flush fitting chokes, so you can interchange from a low choke. You just get 3 with it, I think it is, but you can get more if you require the full range. But depending on the distance of the targets and whether you might be using steel shot, if you're on wildfowling, you would have to use a steel or a non-lead cartridge, so they give pattern differently. You have that option by easily interchangeable chokes. The reason for this, and we can look a little more closely at that in a moment, it's the venting for the gas system, because it's designed to handle such a range of cartridges. And as I say, as we have proved, it's worked very reliably with 28 gram clay cartridges on here, which is good. But when you get bigger cartridges, heavier shot loads, you get a lot more gas required to put a heavy shot load out. There's a self-regulating piston inside with a valve that vents the gas, and it's got to go somewhere, so they've deliberately put some forward-facing vents on there, so the gas can just vent out of the front of the fore end. And here we have the gas piston, which sits within this cylinder that is attached to the barrel, and there will be vents allowing the gas from the fired cartridge. Once it's got to this point along the barrel, some gas will be vented and operate these rods. When the bolt is forward as fired, the piston engages the front of those transfer bars, will apply an impulse of energy which will cycle the action. But when you've got a powerful cartridge in here, this front gas valve system comes into play, and so it only uses the amount of energy it needs to cycle the action, and with say an ounce and a quarter, ounce and a half, whatever it might be, a magnum load, more gas will be automatically vented out of there, so that it's not overly hard working, the action. So it's self-regulating, and it's also apparently self-cleaning. We don't see an awful lot of mess in there for a gas gun, so it seems to be keeping quite clean too. It handles really surprisingly well. I say surprisingly because one imagines a gun chambered for 3.5 cartridges is going to be a little cumbersome and maybe hard work, and it isn't that at all. The weight is not excessive. Even the action size, remarkably, they've managed to keep it surprisingly close to what it might be for a conventional 2 3/4 or 3-inch gun. I don't know quite how they've achieved that, but the end result is a gun which is a reasonable balance. Obviously that changes when you've got cartridges in there, but it's quite light. It points out well when you're in a field situation, be it pigeons or something rather more demanding, like a very high goose with your magnum loads in. I see no reason why you shouldn't settle in quite well. You can feel quite at one with the gun, and I was surprised how well it handled. So if you're a one-gun man or looking for something versatile to add to another gun you might have, then it could fulfill a number of roles and do them quite well. I was quite surprised how well it handles, honestly. Its finish and its capabilities, its specification extends that versatility by the ability to fire full Magnum 3.5-inch loads on those occasions that you might wish or need to, but in a gun that is not overly large. Even the action is quite scaled. It's still a very manageable gun to fulfill a number of roles. So yes, Beretta have excelled themselves with versatility.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you're not a member of BASC, it's time to join now. BASC looking after your sport, looking after you.